Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode falls on the Shabbat of the 26th Iyar, 5785, May 24th, 2025. We're going to be reading along with the book of Shmuel Bet, chapters 10, 11, and 12. Jumping right in from where we left off last time. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everybody I'm not a professional scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the scripture. This week's portion of the Torah, by the way, being Behar-Bechukotai, a double portion. With that said, let's go ahead and jump on in, starting with our translation here on Chabad.org, if you'd like to follow along. Shmuel Bet, chapter 10, verse 1. And it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his stead. And David said, I shall show kindness to Hanun the son of Nahash, just as his father showed me kindness. And David sent to come for him through his servants for his father. And David's servants came into the land of the children of Ammon. And the princes of the children of Ammon said to Hanun their lord, Do you think that David honors your father, that he sent you comforters? Is it not in order to investigate the city and to spy it out, and to search it, that David has sent his servants to you? And Hanun took David's servants, and he shaved off a half of their beards, and he cut off their garments in half up to their buttocks, and he sent them away. And they told it to David, and he sent to meet them, for the men were very much ashamed. And the king said, Remain seated in Jericho until your beards grow, and then you shall return. And the children of Ammon saw that they had become odious to David. And the children of Ammon sent and hired of the Arameans of Beth-Rehob and the Arameans of Zobah 20,000 foot soldiers, and of the king of Makkah 1,000 men, and of Ishtov 12,000 men. And David heard of it, and he sent Joab and the entire host of the mighty warriors. And the children of Ammon came out, and they prepared the battle at the entrance of the gate. And the Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and Ishtov and Makkah were by themselves in the field. And Joab saw that the battlefront was before and behind him, and he chose all of the choice men of Israel, and he sent them against the Arameans. And the rest of the people he gave over to Abishai his brother, and he set them against the children of Ammon. And he said, If the Arameans will be too strong for me, then you shall help me. And if the children of Ammon will be too strong for you, then I shall go to your aid. Be strong, and let us strengthen ourselves on behalf of our people, and on behalf of the cities of our God, and then may God do what is good in his eyes. And Joab and the people that were with him drew forward to do battle against the Arameans, and they fled before him. And when the children of Ammon saw that the Arameans had fled, then they likewise fled from before Abishai, and they came to the city. And Joab returned from the children of Ammon, and came to Jerusalem. And the Arameans saw that they were smitten before Israel, and they gathered themselves together. And Hadadezer sent and brought out the Arameans that were from beyond the river. And they came to Hilam, and Shobach, the captain of the host of Hadadezer, before them. And it was told to David, and he gathered together all Israel, and he crossed the Jordan. And he came to Hilam, and the Arameans set themselves against David and fought with him. And the Arameans fled before Israel, and David slew of the Arameans 700 chariots and 40,000 horsemen, and Shobach the captain of his host he smote, and he died there. And all the kings, the servants of Hadadezer, saw that they were smitten before Israel, and they made peace with Israel and served them. And the Arameans feared to aid the children of Ammon any more. End of chapter 10. So here we have a story of a diplomatic situation escalating into a full-blown war. It says that the children of Ammon, so king of the children of Ammon, he dies, and Hanun, his son, becomes king. Now David, according to this, he says, I will show kindness to Hanun, this guy, the son of Nahash. So he's basically going to offer the new king comfort by sending him servants. And so, in honor of the guy's father. Well, they get there and arrive in the land, and the princes are very suspicious, and they say to the king, Now hold on a minute. You really think he's here to help you? These guys are here to see what we've got. They're spies. They're just looking to see what they can take from us. Don't fall for this trick. Well, unfortunately, they convince him, and so he takes the servants and he humiliates them. He shaves off half of their beards and also cuts their garments up to, it says half up to their buttocks. So, I mean, basically, it's pretty embarrassing. It's just very, very shameful. So they tell David about it. He meets with them, and they remain in Jericho until their beards grow back. So in other words, he lets them remain there so that their beards will grow back so that they won't return ashamed, right? Because if they came home, everybody would see them with their beards cut in half, and it would stick out like, wow, what happened to you, dude? Embarrassing. So in any case, after this, the people of Ammon realize, oh, we screwed up. David is not looking, he doesn't look too favorably upon us now. So they hire the Arameans as well as of both Beth-Rehob and Zobah, and it's a lot of guys. They hire a very significant army, and also 1,000 men from one king, and from another king 12,000. So they've got a significant mercenary army here. Now David hears about this, so he gets one of his top guys, Joab, and all of the host of the mighty warrior. So he sends his best soldiers, and they go to war. So the Ammonites, they come out and they get ready to battle at the gate, and the Arameans and so on are also there with them. So as it says here, the children of Ammon came out prepared the battle at the entrance of the gate. The Arameans of Zobah and Rehob and Ishtov and Makkah were by themselves in the field. So the Ammonites basically stayed back at the base and protected the front door while they sent everybody else to go fight in the field. Now Joab looks around and he sees that in front and behind him he's got to deal with this. So what he does is he takes the very best of the men and he uses them to fight the Arameans, and then he takes the rest and he gives them to his brother Abishai, and he says, go fight the Ammonites. So they make an arrangement. If one of us needs help, the other will back him up, basically. That's the plan. So after this, what comes to pass is that Joab basically says, we'll let God decide who's righteous here. And the answer is the Israelites are going to be the winners of this battle. The Arameans are smote. They cut them down, and then it's basically becomes like retreating. They go and gather with Hadadezer, and then David now shows up for the battle, and he totally beats them up. Like, he completely crushes them. Shobach is the captain of the host of Hadadezer, so he's a top guy over in Hadadezer's army. He also is killed along with 700 chariots, 40,000 horsemen. The Arameans get just absolutely devastated. And so after this is done, they make peace with Israel and they become their servants, right? So now, after this, they basically paid the price for aiding the Ammonites. They no longer will do so. And so from this point on, they are out of the war. That ends chapter 10. Let's go ahead and move on to chapter 11. And it was at the return of the year, at the time of the going out of kings to battle, and David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed in Jerusalem. And it came to pass, at the time of evening, that David arose from his bed, and walked upon the roof of the king's house, and he saw a woman bathing from the roof, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman, and he said, Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers, and he took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. And she was purified from her uncleanliness, and she returned to her house. And the woman conceived, and she sent, and she told David, and she said, I am pregnant. And David sent to Joab, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And Uriah came to him, and David inquired concerning the welfare of Joab, and the peace of the people, and the welfare of the war. And David said to Uriah, Go down to your house, and wash your feet. And Uriah departed from the king's house, and there followed him the king's food. And Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. And they told David, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house. And David said to Uriah, Have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? And Uriah said to David, The ark of Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open field. And shall I come to my house to eat and to drink and to live with my wife? By your life and by the life of my soul, if I will do this thing. And David said to Uriah, Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you off. And Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. And David called him, and he ate before him, and he drank, and he made him drunk. And he went out in the evening to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but to his house he did not go down. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and he sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Place Uriah at the front of the fiercest battle, and go away from him, so that he will be hit and he will die. And it came to pass, when Joab kept watch upon the city, that he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew that there were valiant men. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and some of the people of the servants of David fell. and Uriah the Hittite also died. And Joab sent and told David all the facts concerning the war. And he charged the messenger, saying, When you have finished telling the king all the facts concerning the war, and it shall be if the king's anger is aroused, and he says to you, Why did you approach so near the city to wage battle? Did you not know that they would shoot from upon the wall? Who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman throw an upper millstone upon him from upon the wall, and he died there at Thebes? Why did you approach the wall? And you shall say, Also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. And the messenger went, and he came and told David all that Joab had sent him for. And the messenger said to David, When the men prevailed over us and came out against us in the field, then we came upon them as far as the entrance of the gate. And the shooters shot at your servants from upon the wall, and some of the king's servants died, and also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. And David said to the messenger, So shall you say to Joab, Let not this thing displease you, for the sword devours many times this number. Strengthen your battle against the city, and destroy it, and encourage him. And the wife of Uriah the Hittite heard that Uriah her husband was dead, and she mourned over her husband. And the mourning period passed, and David sent and gathered her to his house, and she became his wife, and she bore him a son. And the thing that David did was displeasing to the Lord. End of chapter 11. So here we have a terrible, terrible story. So the war with the children of Ammon is done. They besiege Rabbah. David's still in Jerusalem. So this is all going on. Now, in the evening, he gets up out of bed and he looks over the balcony, basically. He walks upon the roof and he sees a woman bathing from the roof. So imagine that you are the king and you live on a hill, so you could see the whole entire city below you. This woman was at her home bathing. And so David saw her and thought, wow, she's pretty. And he asks, Is this not Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? So he basically has her come over for a little hangout, and they end up having an affair. So time goes by, and she tells David by messenger, I'm pregnant. So now this is a problem, because Uriah is at war. So the child cannot be his. So David sends to Joab, the general, he says, Send me Uriah the Hittite, and Joab sends him to David. And Uriah comes to him, and he asks Uriah, Tell me about what's going on in the war, and everything. Give me the full story. And so Uriah does as he's assigned, and then David tells him, Go down to your house and wash your feet. So what he's doing here is he's trying to cover up the affair. David is telling Uriah to go home so that he can have relations with his own wife and cover up the fact that they had an affair, because then no one will know that that she cheated on her husband if her husband came home from war and had a night with her, right? It would make sense. So anyway, he sends the guy down with food and everything, but instead of going to his house, he instead chooses to sleep at the entrance of the king's house with his servants. So he doesn't go home. And the next day they go, Uriah did not go home last night. And he asks Uriah, Why didn't you go home? I sent you to go. Haven't you been on a long journey? Why didn't you go home? And Uriah, who clearly is a man of honor, and this is really the thing about it, he says, The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths. And my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open field. And shall I come to my house to eat and to drink and to live with my wife? By your life and by the life of my soul, if I will do this thing. So what he's saying is, the ark and Israel and Judah, they dwell in booths, meaning they sleep outside under the stars. They're not in a lovely home. Next, the army is at war. All his brothers in arms are out there in the field. How could he possibly, in any good conscience, go spend time at home with his wife? It would just be wrong. He morally cannot do that when he knows that his fellow soldiers are out there. Now, I want to make also an interesting point about Uriah here. It says he is Uriah the Hittite. The Hittites are one of the people that are supposed to be not among Israel anymore. So remember this, the Jebusites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and so on. The Hittites are among the list, if I'm not mistaken. So here we have a guy who really has no business still being in Israel according to the commandments given to Moses, but nevertheless, they serve in David's army, and as you can see, this guy is a truly honorable man. And I think, if anything, that really speaks to that. So he doesn't go home. The next day, David tries another little trick. He tries to have him come to the party and come to his house for a little dining and a party. He gets him super drunk, hoping that he'll go home this time. He still doesn't go home. So the next day, David's like, fine, you know what? Forget this. I'm not going to do this the nice way. Hey, here's a message from my general. I'm sending this guy back, and when he gets there, put him on the front line so he'll get killed. And they set up an entire plot that's going to get Uriah killed in the line of battle. Totally disgusting, shameful behavior. Absolutely horrendous, atrocious, embarrassing. Like, this is probably the worst thing that, of all the many sins, this is truly one of the worst that is documented in my eyes. Like, the most cruel thing you can do, the most inhumane, evil thing you can do. And obviously God is of agreement on this, as we'll hear. So what ends up happening is he tells Joab, send Uriah to the front, and we're going to make it so that it's going to be a clear situation that he's going to die. Now, what Joab ends up doing is he comes up with a plan. He has them go and try to siege something, knowing that the people who are doing the siege are going to get killed by the defenders on the wall. And they reference the situation where Abimelech got killed. Remember, he was the king from the book of Judges who took over after slaughtering all of his brothers. He was killed by a woman throwing a millstone on him. So when the report of Uriah being killed will go to David, it's going to be told like this. We're going to tell David that we made a strategic error in battle. And David's probably going to be mad about it. So when he's mad about it, tell him that also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. That'll be the signal to let David know that this was an intentional mistake. This was letting him know that all the people who died in this little screw up, that was all part of the plan. You got it, Your Majesty. We'll take out that guy you want us to get rid of. No problem. Don't worry about it. He's sleeping with the Hittites. Anyway, this is what happens. Mission accomplished. Uriah is killed, and the word gets back. So now, what he tells the messenger to tell Joab, he's like, hey, don't worry about it. You know what? These things happen. The sword, that you're going to kill that many more times, these guys, when you go for round 2. So just don't worry about it. It's cool. It's cool. That's him saying, mission accomplished. I hear you. So just a totally shady thing to do. Now, the word of Uriah's death gets back to her wife, gets back to Bathsheba, his wife, and it says she goes into mourning. Now, this is just terrible. Again, this whole thing is just a horrible situation of a dude literally killing one of his soldiers so he can take his wife. Only the king of Israel, right? You know, this is an interesting point I want to bring up, but it says in the laws of the Kohanim, the laws of the priests, that the high priest cannot even marry. He must only marry a widow of his own kin. So, she'd have to be a Levite, and she'd only marry a virgin of his own kin, not any widows. So, she had to be a Levite and a virgin. Why is that significant? Well, in this situation, David would not be able, if he had the same laws, he would not be able to cover this up, right? He would not be able to marry this woman because the law says that the Kohanim can't do it, but obviously King David can do it. And, I guess he didn't have enough wives already. He needed to, take someone else's wife, I guess, So that's what he did. And so as soon as she's done grieving, he scoops her up and has her become his new wife. And of course, the very last verse here, the thing that David did was displeasing to the Lord. Amen. So, there are just so many things wrong with this. 10 Commandments. Do not covet thy neighbor's wife. Now, again, he's a Hittite. So there is an unusual circumstance in terms of, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. But clearly, this Hittite is a man of honor. He's a man of integrity. He has respect for the king. He has respect for his fellow soldiers. He is the exemplar of what you would want to see in a royal subject. And yet, David did this horrible thing. So now we're going to find out the consequences of that. Let's go ahead and jump into chapter 12, the last chapter for today. Chapter 12, verse 1, Samuel 2. And the Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said to him, There were 2 men in one city, one rich and one poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb which he had bought and reared, and it grew up together with him and his sons. Of his bread it would eat, and from his cup it would drink, and in his bosom it would lie, and it was to him like a daughter. And there came a wayfarer to the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to prepare for the guest that had come to him. And he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man that had come to him. And David became very angry at the man, and he said to Nathan, As the Lord lives, the man who has done this is liable to death. And the ewe lamb he shall repay fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, You are the man! So says the Lord, the God of Israel. I anointed you as king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul, and I gave you the house of your master and your master's wives in your midst, and I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that were too little, then would I add unto you like them and like them. Why have you despised the word of the Lord, to do what is evil in his eyes? You have smitten Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and you have taken his wife for yourself as a wife, and you have slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. And now the sword shall never depart from your household forever, because you have despised me, and you have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. So says the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against you evil out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes, and I will give them to your friend, and he will lie with your wives in the sight of this sun. For you have acted in secrecy, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, Also, the Lord has removed your sin. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because you have greatly blasphemed the enemies of the Lord by this thing, the child also that is born to you shall surely die. And Nathan departed to his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bore to David, and became mortally ill. And David besought God on behalf of the child. And David fasted a fast, and he came in and slept lying on the ground. And the elders of his house stood over him to raise him up from the ground, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the 7th day that the child died. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, Behold, while the child was yet alive we spoke to him, and he did not hearken to our voices. How then shall we tell him that the child is dead, so that he do himself harm? And David saw that his servants were whispering, and he understood that the child was dead. And David said to his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. And David got up from the ground, and washed and anointed himself, and changed his clothes, and he came to the house of the Lord and kneeled. And he came to his house, and he asked, and they set bread before him, and he ate. And his servants said to him, What is this thing that you have done? For the live child you fasted and wept, but when the child died you got up and ate bread? And he said, While the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, Who knows, perhaps the Lord will be gracious to me, and the child will live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he will not return to me. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and he came to her, and he lay with her, and she bore a son, and she called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him. And he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet, and he called his name Yedidah, for the Lord's sake. And Joab fought against Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and captured the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David and said, I have fought against Rabbah, I have also captured the city of waters. And now gather the rest of the people and encamp against the city and capture it, lest I capture the city and my name be called upon it. And David gathered all the people, and he went to Rabbah and fought against it and captured it. And he took the crown of Malcham off his head, and its weight was a talent of gold, and in it was a precious stone, and it was set on David's head. And the spoil of the city he brought forth in great abundance. And the people that were therein he brought forth, and he put them under saws, and under harrows of iron, and under axes of iron, and he made them pass through the brick kiln. And so he did to all the cities of the children of Ammon. And David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. End of chapter 12. All right, so it's time for our recap. So it starts off with a prophet called Nathan. He goes to present himself to David, and he comes bringing a story. Now, the story is a little bit complicated to try to make sense of, but it's a parallel metaphor. It's a metaphor for the situation. So the simple terms of the situation is there's a rich man and a poor man. The rich man has plenty of different animals. He has a great amount of wealth. He's got tons of lambs. The poor man has nothing but one little lamb. Now, the rich man, when a guest comes to his house, rather than taking from his own flock, which he has many of, he goes and takes it from the poor guy. So he takes the lamb from the poor guy who only has one, instead of offering from his own. And David hears this story, and he says, I'm so angry that the person who's done this deserves to die. And not only that, the lamb needs to be paid back fourfold because he did this thing and because he had no pity. So basically, David hears this story and instantly condemns the man. And wouldn't you know it, Nathan tells him, really? That man is you, because that's what you did when you stole Uriah's wife. And now, because of let's go over the list. God took care of you. He made you king. He saved you from Saul. He gave you the house of your master, gave you the house of your master and your master's wives in your midst, gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that were too little, then would he not give you more like them and like them? So why is it that you've despised the word of the Lord, meaning the Torah, and done what is evil in his eyes? Again, adultery, right? He laid with someone else's wife. He also killed Uriah. It's murder. He used his army as a murder weapon. You have smitten Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and you have taken his wife for yourself as a wife. You have slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now the sword shall never depart from your household forever, because you have despised me and you have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. So basically, he is now cursed forever, his household to be cursed forever in war. And he also tells him, from your house I will raise up evil against you, and I will take your wives from you and give them to someone else, and they're going to be with your wife in front of everybody. You acted like a secret scoundrel. I'm going to make sure this is out in the open. And so David, he basically is like, oh no, I've done so terribly. And he also gets told, well, David, the good news is God removed your sin, so you're not going to die. So basically, David was blessed. God spared him from what was liable for the death penalty, sure enough. So the other thing is, because you have greatly blasphemed the enemies of the Lord by this thing, the child also that is born to you shall surely die. So, in essence, it is punishment time. This is the part that's a little confusing, the language here. Because you have greatly blasphemed the enemies of the Lord by this thing. So, is it that by making the enemies of the Lord part of this plot, that it was blasphemous? Is he suggesting that he has glorified the enemies of the Lord by doing against what the Lord said? I'm not 100% sure, but essentially, or it could even be that because he was a Hittite, I'm not sure, but either way, the child that is born to you shall surely die is the verdict. And so the child gets sick, mortally ill, after he's born, And David basically, he prays, he fasts, he lays down on the dirt or on the ground. He does everything he can in prayer to try to save the child. He won't eat, even when people try to make him eat. And it says on the seventh day, the child died. And they didn't even know how to tell David. They're like, how do we tell him? If we tell him, he's going to just get so upset. And so he sees that they're sneaking around and whispering, and he goes, did my child die? Is the child dead? And they just say yes. And so David just kind of gets up and moves on with his life. He cleans up, he goes and prays, anoints himself, changes his clothing, and they ask him as he's eating, what's going on here? When the child was still alive, you were fasting and weeping, but now that he's dead, you get up and eat bread? And David basically says when he was alive, I thought maybe if I did those things, I could save his life and the Lord would have mercy. But now that he's dead, what's the point? I can't save him. I can't get him back. It's gone. That's the end. I can go to him, but he won't return to me. So I can die and go to him, but there's no way for him to come back to me. It's pretty callous, but I think also in choosing to accept it, this is very important. This is like Nadab and Avihu, right? When Aaron's two sons were killed, what is Aaron not allowed to do? He was not allowed to show any sort of grief or mourning because it would disrespect God's judgment. So David, in being faithful to God now in this way, is showing that he accepts God's punishment now that God ultimately chose to honor his intentions to kill the child. Now, fast forward, another thing that's really important here. I've heard the term mamzer, right? I think it might be how this might be a mamzer, like a child who's born out of an affair and things like that. So, like, just for many reasons, this child is kind of like it would have been a problem inside of the context of the house of David. Another thing that's interesting is that the next child, Solomon, is born. This one happens while David is married to Bathsheba, so it's not happening out of wedlock. They have this child while they're actually married without it being an affair. So that's just something of significance. In any case, that's the situation. He consoles Bathsheba, and then they have another child. And so he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet, and he called his name Yedidiah, for the Lord's sake. And so now it says Joab across the way, he's fighting Rabbah of the children of Ammon, right? He captures the royal city, and he basically tells David, hey, I've captured the city of waters, and now bring the whole army and wage war on that city because I don't want to capture it. I don't want the glory and the credit. That's yours to have, right? So this is probably a pretty good example of what's going on with his relationships with his generals. Joab is personally doing like all the heavy lifting, and then he has David come in for the kill shot so that David gets the glory. And so that's exactly what happens. David comes in, he conquers it, he captures it, then he takes the crown of Malcolm off of the king's head, and its weight is a talent of gold with a precious stone, and they put it on David's head. And of course, it says the spoil of the city he brought forth in great abundance. Now, lastly, it says the people that were therein he brought forth, and he put them under saws, under harrows of iron, and under axes of iron, and he made them pass through the brick kiln. And so he did to all the cities of the children of Ammon, and David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. So I'm not 100% sure on this translation. There are two ways I can translate this. Literally, or as in they're doing this kind of labor now. Put the people under saws, under harrows of iron, under axes of iron, and made them pass through the brick kiln. So I'm pretty sure this is just the horrible barbarism that he chose to afflict on the Ammonites. So what is it? Basically chopping their people up under saws, under harrows of iron, cutting their heads off or something with axes, passing them through the brick kiln. So cooking these people, like roasting them to burn them alive or whatever. I don't know. It's horrible. Otherwise, the translation of this maybe means that like he made them laborers, but I don't think that's the case. I think that it actually just straight up means he chose to be a super barbaric. He went Babylonian on them. So in any case, so he did to all of them, and it says David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. That's the end of that chapter. So in conclusion, a few things. Uriah the Hittite is obviously a man who seems to have done very little wrong, at least by following his heart of what he thought was right and wrong. David tried to have him covered up. Now, another thing of interest here, did Uriah not already have other children? I'm not 100% sure. One of the laws regarding Israel is that before you go out to battle, you have to make sure that anybody who has a wife has already had the chance to have a child with that wife, right? So there is supposed to be one law for the man and one law for the native and the stranger. So I want to say that there's a chance that Uriah had children and that there was hope that his household was not entirely wiped out. But it's also not the best looking situation because he's a Hittite and they're not supposed to be working with Hittites. So I feel like Uriah was just born under an unlucky star, but had a great integrity and quality of spirit. So that's something to consider. I'd compare it in some ways to how with Abraham, Eleazar, his top guy, his faithful servant, I'm pretty sure was a Canaanite. And so he similarly, like, he was cursed because he was born as a Canaanite, but he still got a pretty high level of honor. One other thing I'll mention about the child that died. So it says that he died on the 7th day. Keep in mind that the 8th day is the traditional day for when they do the circumcision, right? So the child died before he could be circumcised, essentially preventing him from getting the covenant. So it's a mercy or something elsewise to say that the child was allowed to live for 7 full days instead of just dying outright. This was as good as God could do, maybe. Or maybe making David afflict himself was the intended punishment. Either way, the baby died. And that's the end of that. Solomon is born, and obviously it says God loved Solomon, so that's the story there. We'll learn more about him in the future, I'm sure. In any case, that's the end of this week's episode. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Weekly Parashahcast. I hope you'll tune in again next time. But until then, I conclude, as always, Baruch Hashem.